Irina asked a question here. Hello, I have two questions that may not be in the content of today's workshop. However, I'm trying to my luck and I asked one, how to embed GPS coordinates in photos. My camera doesn't have GPS. That's something we can do. Um, Two, I would like to merge several photos, manage mode, process parent. Yeah, okay. But I can't because the individual photos are of different sizes. Right. Okay. Per question two, I'm pretty sure that might be a limitation of panorama photos, that they have to be in the same orientation, and the same size. Honestly, that's a tougher one. I don't know the answer offhand. I would suggest reaching out to our on the Connect page, just reach out to the developers. There's like an ask a Q&A question, and developers answer that. That might be one for that space. But my guess is I do remember when that tool was introduced. I remember there being some limitations on in terms of that it needed to be the same size. Now, whether or not that's still the case, I don't know, but it would be worth looking into there. Question number one, however, is resolvable through, I think, the map tool in ACDSee. So we'll look at that actually. Here, I'll close this and then we'll come back to this page because we got to have to, it pertains to our workshop today. But okay, so mapping an image. Okay, so your phone doesn't, or phone or whatever, doesn't actually take or doesn't add GPS coordinates, so latitude and longitude. And that's not a problem because I think that if you go into an image, these already all have map data, it looks like on it. But if I was to take this image, for example, that doesn't, I think you're able to plot it. So in this case, this image, we can go to map and place on map. And when we do this, it'll give me the ability to decide or determine where this image was taken. So what this looks like is once the map is open here, I'm able to essentially drag and drop my photo. So here's where our office is in Victoria. Let's just place this image somewhere in Souk here. And then when I do that, I have the ability to save the location. So if I save it, you can see that the dot is removed from the center of the map tool. And if you notice here, there's this little map icon that appears on the left-hand corner here of the actual thumbnail. And so what this actually contains is now if we go to metadata, our properties section on the right-hand side here, if I go to, yeah, it's probably under EXIF. Yeah. So if I go to this, you'll see that the latitude and longitude and reference coordinates are actually listed here. So what I've been able to do here is, I mean, this is obviously provided you know the location of where these photos are taken. So you can't reproduce without that. So you either need to know where the photo the where photo was taken, or you need to have some sort of GPS coordinates marked down or some form of other. But in the case of your camera, which doesn't take those or doesn't have that GPS value when it's taking the photos, this would be how you'd reproduce that. So Irina, all you do here, just to reiterate once more, is let's just close the map um, so we can show you this. I'm actually forgetting how to close the map here. Oh, you know what? It's a pain, isn't it? Yeah. So all I would do is I would take a photo here, one that does not have GPS coordinates. I can either go to panes and the map tool here, or I can just right click on the image and go to map, place on map. And then when it says place on map, right, you really do need to drag and drop the actual thumbnail onto the map. So I'll just place it here. And in so doing, it creates a little pending icon that showcases its location on the map. And then from there, you save it, and that is added to the file. So that's how you do that. Great question. Let's see here. Luis, hello, good afternoon. Are there still? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. No comment. Great. Let's get started today, folks, on the workshop. So for those of you that I don't know, how many of you we're going to be talking today about essentially we're going to be talking about categorization and also about just like easy ways and sort of at least my workflow and how I organize my files in ACDSee. And it happens to be good timing because I was recently in Mexico with my partner and I took a bunch of photos. So it'd be like, okay, perfect. Well, I'll just take these photos and we'll go through the process of, what it looks like to organize files, and we'll talk about some of the ways in which ACDSee actually makes that process a lot easier. So, um, okay, so let's do that. For how many of you have actually used ACDSee Mobile Sync? So I use this all the time, and I rarely talk about it in ACDSee, but it's like an app that you can download on either iPhone or your Android phone. And then what it does is it just syncs your images to your computer, specifically to your version of ACDSee that you select. And it's awesome. So it prevents you from basically having to open up some sort of cloud like Google Drive or whatever. And then it also prevents you from having to like plug in your phone to your computer and do this like really manual function of going through the process of like importing from the device, which in this case is the phone. So anyway, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this concept, I'm actually just going to show you just so you can download it. It looks like a lot of you already use it, which is great. But yeah, if you go to ACDSee's website, I think it's under products, mobile applications. Yeah, it's just a free download. So go nuts, fill your boots. This is an awesome tool. But yeah, so there's one for Android and one for iPhone there. And from there, you basically just take your files, you choose, select the files that you want to bring onto your desktop computer, and then you work from there. Okay. Pat said, I'm trying to find the best way of using ACDSee on desktop when I'm at home and laptop out in the field, but with a common database. That's sort of beyond the scope of this workshop today, Pat. My apologies. Um, Sven asked, oh, yeah, yeah. So anyway, I would suggest using the ACDSee Mobile Sync. It's a really useful tool. Speaking of which, I have my files here. So I have a bunch of photos from Mexico, starting kind of here in this order. And these are the images that I want to kind of go through the process of organizing and categorizing, right? So organizing to me, just to give you an idea, is kind of what organizing looks like is it's the process of kind of moving your files and finding a location for your files that on your hard drive that fits. And then organizing them might also involve like rating your images and as well as renaming your images, that sort of thing. Whereas categorizing is a bit of a different function where it's where we look at our images for qualities. And these qualities we're going to make searchable, functionally searchable, so that we can you can navigate to them easily. So I have my photos here selected from my trip in Mexico. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to, with them all selected here, I'm just going to right click and I'm just going to move to a folder. We'll actually make a new folder for these images. So I'm going to do that. Here, it allows me to select where they go. So in this case, I can actually rename this Mexico, and this was in 2025. So I'll just create a little folder here. And oh, sorry, no, that was 2024. And then that's where they'll be placed. So I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to go through the process of creating a brand new folder in this case. So we'll do that. Oh, oops. I don't know what happened there, but created a new folder here instead. Let's see. Yeah, let's just do this instead. I'll just rename this. Let's see here. I kind of want this elsewhere. There we go. Pictures. Mexico. 2024. There we go. There we go. So we'll go back up to our pictures folder here. Let's see here. Was this created? Where is it? That's odd. Okay, we'll do this a different way. That's fine. I'm just going to take these same photos here. I'm just going to place them into a folder that I've created here. So I'll do this. I'll just create a quick little folder here and I'll move it. I'm going to go Mexico 2024. And I'm going to take all of these here, from here to here. I'm just going to put them right into this folder here. It's going to move them. And then this will enable me, and I'll just actually move this into my pictures folder here. So that will move the reference folder, and it is now in the pictures folder, so which means it will be in here. There it is. So there's all my files there. So I just first and foremost just created a quick folder for them to be contained within. And from there, I think what I would like to do is let's just sort of begin the process of sort of organizing these. And the first thing that comes to mind is you can see here on all these files, right? Well, I have a little indicator of where they were taken. So yeah, thanks, Ryan. If I was to click on, say, this little icon here, you can see that as I zoom in, there's locations, just as Irina asked earlier, there where these photos were taken. So here's Mexico City here with a little indicator of how many photos were taken where in this case. I'll just close this. So I have all these files here. Let's just go through the process of renaming them. So I'm just going to select them all. So I'll just do Control A here. And then we're going to go through the batch process. And the batch process is going to be what helps us essentially rename these files and give them a sort of a scheme or system to the way that they're named. So if I go to rename file here, if there's a lot of different ways to do this. The sort of standard way is to assign a template or a naming scheme to these. And this is kind of beyond the scope of this workshop, but there's ways to search and replace certain functions within the name, to case change, to insert text, remove text, and strip spaces from the name, which we can sort of run these operations. But in this case, I don't need that to be that complicated. Like I can just rename these. For example, I might go holiday, Mexico, 2020. And then so you can see that the current name here is this sort of number that was generated by my phone. And then the new name is this holiday Mexico 2024. Notice that they have the same name in this case. So perhaps what would make sense here would be to do some form of underscore and then a value amount here. So in this case, by adding 3 number signs to the end of this naming structure, you can see that it gives me like a 001, 002, 003. So the amount is dependent on the amount of number signs that we list here. So if I list 4, it would give me 4 digits in this case to input some sort of value. There's only 79 photos here, so it doesn't really make sense to do much more than 3 in this case. But that being said, we can add as many as we want depending on how many photos we have. What happened here? Oh, that's odd. Here. No, we'll go like this. So I'll just leave 3 number signs, and that will leave me with, in this case, 3 digits. So if I happen to go back to Mexico, then I have up to 999 photos that I can take in this case that would correspond to that. So I'm pretty happy with this. I don't need to search and replace or change the text case or anything like that. So this process would be useful if I was editing or updating, not necessarily changing the name itself, but maybe rather just searching for specific qualities within that and wanting to change those, or make it lowercase rather than uppercase, that sort of thing. Bruno asks, is there a way to rename default settings not to go back to template since I used search and replace? Is there a way for rename default settings not to go back to templates? So not to use the template itself, but so if you go to these, so you have your existing, naming structure. If you go to search and replace and you search for your value, so if I was to search for Mexico, say, right, it would be replaced with this value right here. So in this case, there's nothing listed here. So as you can see, it removes it from the listing here. So You don't necessarily have to apply a template adjustment. You can just go to search and replace. Just make sure that the template section is off clicked or clicked turned off in this case. And then this one allows me to sort of update those. Yeah, so it's going to go to template because it's the default mode, right? But the actual clicking on the name, like search and replace or case change, insert text, remove space, that's how you open up the set of tools here. Just having the default template is the one that it opens to. Whether or not you like in this case, are you curious whether or not you can set search and replace as your default so it just doesn't open to template? Is that what you mean? Is it just Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think so, lest it says something. No, not within. Okay, yeah. I see your question, Bruno. That's a good question. That sounds like something that I would actually. Okay, so go to the Connect page and just ask that to the developers because that is like a feature that I agree that should exist in ACDC. And I think if you were to just suggest it, be like, hey, I want to be able to go into the advanced settings and say, hey, I want to be able to open this up in search and replace and not template because that would expedite your workflow or something like that. That stuff like that for the developers is super easy for them to adjust, like so clean and easy for them to fix. Anyway, so just make that suggestion there is all I'm saying. The answer to your question is no, you can't do that. No problem. Okay, so we've used the renaming function, the batch renaming function, to rename these images. It'll go through the process. Essentially, it'll name them for us. And then you can see on our images here, basically that name has been replaced. And I think the most important image is that they're numbered, right? So the most important aspect of it is that they're numbered. So I have Holiday Mexico 24, and then I have the corresponding digit for the image here. So just to reiterate, I would have selected a group of photos, gone to batch, rename file, and rename. And that's what opens up this little, this guy right here. Oh, you know what? I just realized I haven't turned on my mouse highlight. Let's probably make this easier. Oh, much easier. There we go. So, okay, so we now have this process of renaming the files in this case. And from here, we can sort of go through the process of actually like creating a catalog. So we have these images somewhat organized. Maybe something that we would explore at the end or now we could do that is deciding which images we like, to rate the images accordingly. Just having these images here doesn't necessarily mean they're all equal, right? I might like these images, certain images more than other images. In the case of, being in Chapultepec Park or something like that, like maybe I really liked these images and I was, fond of these. And so using something like the ratings method, like what appears up top here, this gives me the ability to rate these images and then catalog predicated on that rating system. What does that look like? So I like these images. So I would either right click on them and go to the set a rating, or I could just use the properties panel itself to set a rating. When I do that, it adds this quality and you can see it right away. This quality is a rating of 5. Again, I'm using the term rating, loosely here. It's my interpretation of what this is, which maybe 5 looks like 5 stars or it's the highest quality. But for your workflow, maybe a rating of 1 is the best rating. It's the first place or whatever, right? So again, there is some degree of interpretation on how these tools are you use in your workflow. And that example of them being, the one that is the greatest value to you, your sort of subjective value, doesn't matter. It can be whatever it is. In this case, for me personally, I'm just going to think of it as stars, and this means that it's 5 stars. So that value, that 5 stars, is assigned to our image, and right away we're able to reference that value. What does that look like? So right now, the method of searching that I'm using is I'm searching through folders. So in ACDSee, there's kind of 2 main ways of searching for our images. The first is folders, and as part of our organizational process is to add our images to folders. We're not just working off of our pictures folder that contains thousands of photos. That would be pretty messy, right? Be crazy. So the first thing we do is we go through the process of sort of adding those values. And we start the process of actually organizing our files. And a part of that is the rating function. So we can navigate to our files using something, the folders tree. And really what the folders tree is, as you can see here, it's just a description of exactly the Windows folder hierarchy. So pictures is a real photo and pictures is a real folder or sort of default folder within the Windows operating system. And it's just going to list all the folders that we've created, one of which is now this folder Mexico 2024. So we've navigated to these files using that folder, but how else can we navigate to files? Well, we added this rating of 5, right? So we can actually look at our images that correspond to that rating system. If I navigate to catalog and go to 5 here, right? Rating of 5, a bunch of images are going to come up that I've rated previously, but somewhere in this listing is going to be my Mexico trip. And note that they are, where is it here? I'll find it. It's a rating of 5. Excuse me. Oh, maybe I need to refresh. No, it's right there. There we go. So it's listed here. And these are now essentially searchable. So all of these images exist in different folders. Some of them, as you can see, are like sort of photo shoot photos, right? Other than which are landscape photos. And in the case of my holiday photos now appear here as well. So what ACDSee is doing is it's collating a group of images predicated upon a quality. And so a way to think about organizing your files on a really simple way is to just go through the process of assigning some form of rating to your image. And by doing so, this gives you the ability to search for those qualities. So if you like to cull images that you don't like, what I would do is I would go through the process of, rather than culling each file individually, what I would do is I just assign a rating to your images, go through, quickly assign a rating to your images, and then open up the rating of one and then go through the process of just deleting all of them or finding a new folder for them or what have you. But in this case, you can see that we can search to particular qualities, with the rating being one of those qualities, which sort of introduces us to the next section that I'd like to talk about. And that's like, what does adding keywords and categories look like in ACDSee? Because these are really meaningful ways of organizing your images. So, okay, so we have these two rating images of 5 in this case. I'm just going to go back into this and sort of showcase how this looks. So Mexico 2024 folder is here. Searching for a quality, in this case, a quality of 5 is here. One of the things that I should really note, and this is very important to understand this, especially for new users to ACDSee, this cataloging process doesn't actually move these files location um, unless we're doing something with them, like, for example, deleting them or something. But searching for these values, like I said, it kind of collates them into one space. That's only for referencing them, right? But it doesn't actually move them anywhere. They're not being moved from that Mexico 2024 folder to our 5 rating folder. No, it's just drawing on all these photos that have various different locations and showing them to us, essentially, cataloging our images in that way. I use view and scroll rapidly from image to image and rate from there super fast. Another way you can rate images really quickly actually is by using, this is a good point, is by using something called auto advance. And this is something that's really useful. So we'll just showcase it really quickly. I can rate my images. This first image, for example, I can rate, let's see here. If I turn on, let's see here. Let's go to my tools and options. Let's just make sure that in manage mode, auto advance is turned on. Let's see here, where is it? File list, auto advance. Yeah. So auto advance gives us the ability to apply some form of rating system. to our image, or tagging or labels or categories and keywords. And then what it does, it will move to the next image in our tree. So I gave the rating of 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on auto advance for this for manage mode. You can also apply ratings, labels, that sort of thing in view mode. So we'd be able to turn it on in that mode as well. But basically what I'm going to do is click OK, and that gives me the ability to, how do I actually, I think to rate is, let's see here. Oh yeah, it's number pad, just 1 to 5. Let's see here. So if I was to click, I don't think I don't have the keyboard that can support that, but basically I would go through the process of rating our images this way. So for example, if I liked this image, we know I like this image, we know I like this image, and it moves to the next image. I can also do this in a different way where I can open up the film strip section and I can actually see particular images. It's a pretty grainy image because I zoomed in, but I can see these and then I can rate in correspondence with them as I'm looking at them. So auto advance just gives me the ability to just interact with these really, really super quickly. In addition to Bruno's suggestion, we can also do this. So can you restrict the filtering of images by rating, etc., just within the current folder? Yeah, so that's a really good question as well, Pat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the view mode here back to thumbnails, and that will open up this folder again. You're curious how to restrict the view. So I think what you're describing is something like filter. So when you're within a folder, you can go to this filter section, and then you can filter predicated on a value. So one of those values, for example, would be ratings. One of those values would be labels, which we haven't talked about here, but there are these little color labels that appear up at the top right here. Pardon me. And then by categories. So we can also filter by categories. So if I was filtering by images rated 5, you can see that this gray value appears up at the top here that indicates that, hey, we're filtering by 5. And as such, there's really only 2 images in this folder of 79 photos or whatever that have a rating of 5. So this is a fast and efficient way to just within that folder view exactly those particular ratings. Hopefully that answers your question, Pat. It's a good one. Sven uses auto advance. We talked about that. Good job, Sven. Mike D. Are these labels, ratings, and keywords automatically embedded in the JPEG so the information is available in other software or only in ACDSee? Okay, that's perfect. That's my next point. I'm just going to unfilter now. Unfilter, I would just go back to the filter tab and open all. So who asked this question? Mike did. Great. I'm so glad, Pat. Also, yeah, whatever. We'll get to all of them. I'm going to address some of these questions in the Q&A panel too. I just noticed there's a ton of relevant questions that popped up in the comment section. So Mike's question is a good one. One of the things you'll notice, and this is going to be the case for when we're adding metadata of any form. So we've talked about adding metadata as it pertains to ratings. If we were to add keywords and categories, like we're going to explore in a moment, you will see that this little icon comes up when we go to adding that. So there's this little icon here that looks like a sort of like an analog film canister. It's this little 3-ring, almost like a stack of tires kind of icon here. That indicates to us, me in this case, the user, that the image quality or the rating quality that we've added, some form of metadata quality that we've added, is not yet embedded in the file. It is merely sort of added to the file and loosely a part of our database at this point. So what does this look like? I like these 2 architecture photos. So if I was to rate these, say 4, for example, hopefully, Mike, what you see is this icon will appear. This icon is really important. When I leave ACDSee, when I close the program or the software itself, it's going to flag me to embed my metadata. What it means is for all of these photos, for example, for exactly this photo, this photo, this photo, this photo, this photo, this photo, and this photo, there is pending metadata on these files that we need to embed within the file. So what does this mean exactly? So ACDSee has proprietary metadata, right? this metadata like categories and keywords are things that ACDSee sort of handles and is able to add to files. And then correspondingly, it's able to view this information in files that have these values embedded. If you were to send these files, say to a friend who doesn't have ACDSee, they're not going to be able to see certain qualities like these ACDSee metadata qualities. There's a reason for that. But basically, the short answer of it is that this metadata is visible in ACDSee, and it doesn't kind of fall into metadata like IPTC values or EXIF values that are universally viewable to other systems and other users. For example, when I open up an image just using my folder hierarchy like this, let's do it live together. Let's open up one of these images. Where was it? Mexico 2024? That was it. So if I open up one of these images here and I go to properties, should be down here. There will be a details section that will open up a bunch of information here, right? For example, there's all this camera maker information. There's also going to be, I don't know, things, there's going to be various IPTC and EXIF values that are listed here. That information is something that everyone can see, right? If you were to send this file to somebody else, that would be something that they can, they can see themselves. Whereas this category and keyword information, some of these ratings, labels, that sort of thing are not necessarily going to be visible just in that properties section there. So what are we actually doing when we're embedding metadata? We're doing something really important in ACDSee, but it's for the benefit of the user more than it's for the benefit of, say, an external party. So what embedding does is it essentially adds that information to the file itself so that we can reconstruct our database in the event that our database is lost. So when we add metadata to our files, we're adding that metadata to a database that we're creating actively in ACDSee. ACDSee is looking for things like ratings, keywords, categories, etc. Now, you can, when you buy a version of ACDSee, like the next version of ACDSee, for example, you're like, I can't wait to get the next product. When you do so and you install it, you're going to need to direct to your old database, provided that you want the qualities that were within the characteristics of that database. So if you're like, hey, I love the idea of having all these old keywords and categories that I created because I'm really proud of them and they took a lot of work to do, I would do this thing where I would go to, well, let's see here. I would go to something like I think it's under database here. I would convert my old database. And so what that does is when I install the new version of the software, I can then reference that database. I can use that old database, and then all my old images correspond to the ratings and labels, etc., that I gave them. When I embed metadata in those files, those particular images there, what this gives me the abilities to do is reconstruct my database in the event that I've lost my database. So let's say I got a new computer entirely, and I also have a new version of ACDSee. Well, I don't have the ability, unless I have that database file from my previous ACDSee, I don't have that file on my computer. So what I would do when I'm embedding this information is, okay, well, I have those photos because I put them on an external hard drive or something like that, moved them onto my new computer. And then what I can do is I can actually catalog the files themselves for any information that's contained within them. For example, when I do this, I can steal ACDSee metadata, including categories, keywords, tagged, and collections, excuse me, from the file themselves rather than having to reference this old database. So my point being, the whole point of this is when we embed our metadata, it's essentially saving information to these files that we can use in the future as a way to reconstruct our database in the event that we've lost it. There's also other things we can do with embedded metadata. Um, Things like category or keywords, rather, we can move them into our our IPTC column, and that way we can sort of show them to people that don't have ACDSee, and that would give us the ability to sort of send that file to even someone who doesn't have ACDSee, and they'll be able to see those keywords. That being said, that's way beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. The other thing is embedding metadata in our files, provided that our friend has ACDSee, they'll be able to see that information. They'll be able to construct that information as well, predicated on those files. So, Mike, that's a really big question, and hopefully this answers it in some degree. Let me know if you have any questions in regards to it, but that's a really good question. And all I can say is just get into the habit of embedding your metadata because it's helpful and important in the event that something goes wrong, or I want to reconstruct based on these keywords that I've added. Okay, let's answer a couple more questions and then we're going to get back on track in regards to this. I'll answer maybe two more questions that I can, and then we'll come back to questions later on in the workshop. So Tony asked, when importing files, they regularly seem to get placed in date folders that don't match the actual image date, often out by 1 or 2 days. Is this a known issue or do I need to adjust a setting? Interesting. Um, I've never I've never tried this. I've never experienced this. This very much sounds like it could be a bug in ACDSee that no one's expressed. If it is, I would just recommend reaching out to the developers over the Connect page because they'll be able to answer this question or at least explain why there's a structural issue there. It might be looking at the first photo in the image series, which might have like a different date. There's probably a rationale for that date discrepancy. Either that or it's a bug and just needs to be addressed in that case. Oh, and then Sharon added, very good point. What about time zone change? So you could be taking these images in a different time zone, in which case they might be a day behind or a day forward or something. Really good point. Very good point. I didn't even think of that. But that's a good question, Tony. So one more question, and then we'll get back on track here. B Deal asked, just got an email about our workshop. Is it being recorded? It is being recorded, and it will be on our YouTube page. I update them a couple days to 3 or 4 days after the workshop is complete. It will be there. So you will be able to see it there. Okay, back on track, and then we'll answer some more questions later. So I have these. Okay, so what have we done? Okay, so we've added them to a folder. We've added these files themselves to a folder. We've gone through the process of just renaming the files, and we've briefly talked about the process of like rating images themselves. So I have all these images here, and let's go through the process of maybe adding a couple more values to this. And when I say values, I mean let's add some categories and keywords to these images. So I'm going to just select all of these images in my folder here, and we're going to go through the process of making probably a single category and maybe a group of categories for a group of keywords for these images. So, we have them in a folder, right? That that is Mexico 2024. But the other thing we can do is we can just organize these by a category themselves. And maybe a category that I would add to these images would be something as simple as holiday. Just like when I want to quickly view all of my holiday images, this would be the way that I would do that. So in order to add just a single category with no subcategories, or we could add a subcategory. But maybe what I do is I go and I just right click my category section here, and we'll just add a brand new top level category, and we'll call it holiday. When I right click category, it gives me the ability of creating a top level category or a subcategory that goes underneath it. So these are holiday images. So what I would do is once I have a new category here, I would just click on a category, And you can see that a bunch of information is added to these files. And more specifically, it looks like the category icon is added. So this little sticker tag looking guy that appears on the left-hand corner of the thumbnail here indicates to me that these images now have categories associated with them. And what that means is if I navigate to the catalog panel, if I go to holiday here, if I click on this, all of these images will now come up, but under a catalog or a search term rather than them being corresponding to a particular folder. So this gives me the ability to open these up. Let's kind of expand upon this idea. I'm just going to go back to my, let's see, I'll go back to my pictures folder here. This is useful because we might have other images in a similar category. I'm just going to pick a random, yeah, we'll take a random folder here, and I'm just going to give all these images also the category of holiday. So now if I open up this holiday category, you can see all my Mexico images are here in addition to the other images that I just added with that category. So this is really valid basically because now I can create this, I can go into all these different folders with all these different holidays that I've had, and I can just quickly add one single category that enables me to open up all of those images in one catalog search. Now, what if I want to differentiate between these holidays? Well, what I could do is I could go back to, say, that other photo, sorry, that other folder, go to Mexico 2024, select all these images, and I can say, well, let's add a new category underneath of this category. So I want a sub-holiday category. I would create a category. In this case, I would create a subcategory underneath of it, and I'll differentiate between these two. So I'll say, okay, these images are holiday images, but more than that, they're also holiday images taken in Mexico. So now I have two categories listed here. And as such, when I go back to cataloging, I can see that, oh, look, there's a little plus icon here. So I can differentiate between my Mexico trip here and also all of my holidays that I've taken. Vice versa, I can take these, I can give them a completely new category as well. Let's call this like, I don't know, let's Ontario. Some of those images were taken in Ontario. So I'll name that. And then these guys can be labeled as Ontario images, which means that I can differentiate between these two trips. I can see all of my holidays together. I can see just my Mexico holidays, or I can see just my Ontario holidays in this case. So I've created one broad level category, and then within it, I have these two subcategories that allows me to differentiate between the two. And that gives me a really quick and easy way to start the process of organizing these images. Now, not only are they in their own folder, but they're also searchable based on the term of category, in this case, these holiday categories. So let's open up this Mexico holiday here. And I'm not even going to navigate to the folder because I don't need to. I already have a catalog panel with all this information in it now. Keen people in the audience will notice that pending icon has appeared on all of these images. So what I want to do is I'm going to just resolve that pending icon so that information is now embedded in the file. What I can do to do this is I would just navigate to this folder or wherever I see this information, this pending icon, and I would just go through the process of, let's see here, it would be metadata, and I would just embed the metadata. And when I do this, it will give me this flag that says it's going to be embedded into 79 files. So things like ratings, keywords, categories, etc., are going to be embedded into the file, which then removes that pending icon, and it basically adds that information to the file itself. So you can see that little film canister icon disappears, and now it's present in all these images here. So we have created a category here. Now, some of these images, I'm a big architecture fan, right? I like taking photos of buildings. That's my favorite thing to do on holidays. It's kind of silly. I'm not taking photos of food. I'm not necessarily taking photos of beautiful vistas or whatever. I'm just really into the appearance and look of architecture. So maybe something that's important to me is architecture as a value. And maybe that's something I want to create a keyword around so that I can search based on particular keywords such as architecture in my images. Um, let's look at that. So I'm just going to select a bunch of images that have buildings in them, and let's go through the process of adding um, that architecture keyword. We'll just take these as a sort of preliminary scan in this folder, and we'll add an architecture keyword to this. Um, architecture is already a default keyword in ACDSee, but I can add it here to this image. It will be added to as a catalogable and searchable term when I click on the keyword itself. So if I go to click on it there, you can see that those images now have the keyword of architecture listed in them. This little check mark is indicated. And then that way I can now reference these images predicated on that keyword. So if I go to this keyword and go to architecture, you can see that a bunch of images already have this function, but the ones that I took in Mexico have it, and they're visible right there. So I can see that keyword here, but the other thing I can do is I can create a sub keyword within that to specify where this architecture is. So let's just take those same buildings as an example here, the ones in this folder that have, you know what, we can even do this faster by filtering based on a keyword. So we'll filter based on a keyword. Oh, it doesn't look like I can do that. Looks like I can only filter by categories. Okay, never mind, that's fine. I'll just click on them. So I'll take these guys right here and I'll just click on them all. And all of these images have architecture keyword on them. Oops. And what I can do here is I can add a sub keyword. So I can go right click on my architecture keyword right here, and I'll add a new keyword. And by doing so, I can just add a simple keyword like something like Mexico. So not only do these images are of interest to me because I'm interested in architecture in general, but now I know where they're taken, right? So if I'm looking up something like architecture, but going back to the catalog panel, right? If I open up the architecture panel itself, all of these images pop up, including the ones I took in Mexico, of architecture. Now, that being said, I can just filter just the ones taken in Mexico with this second keyword here. So not only can I filter based on the quality of, hey, these are holiday photos, just using something like the category pane. Specifically, I took these holiday photos in somewhere like Mexico, but I can also add keywords based on particular interests. So like animals that are present in the image, certain people perhaps, other values like particular landmarks, whatever. I mean, your keywords are completely up to you, right? You can fill them with whatever information you want. But in this case, I'm interested in architecture. And then I've given myself the ability to add this, like, I guess, geographic keyword underneath architecture to determine where those photos were taken. So to me, someone who's definitely planning on doing more vacations and looking at more places and taking more photos of architecture, I'm planning in the future. I'm planning for that particular keyword. And on top of that, too, I can then there specify where those architectural images were taken based on that sub keyword. Really useful stuff. Like more than anything else, this gives me the ability to organize predicated on qualities that I liked about my photos and to be able to quickly bring up these files as well. This becomes really a lot more interesting when I'm looking at architecture, right, that I took in Mexico, and now I'm filtering based on a rating. So let's say I'll filter based on a rating of 4. Well, I liked these images, right? They have a higher rating than some of the lower rated images or unrated images. So now I have the ability of adding these filters on top so I can sort of conversely add all these other qualities at the same time, like something like rating. What is the difference between categories and keywords? Commonly asked question. There is very subtle differences between the two that I always forget, okay? But they functionally are very, very similar in terms of their application. Keep in mind that They might be handled differently by in terms of like their metadata and that sort of thing on the back end, but the actual application and function of them is very similar. For example, when I create keywords, it gives me the ability to create these like top level category keywords. What else one do I have here? So I created a category in the past, like a category grouping called cuisine, and then I have all these different cuisine types, right? And the same thing is also the case in the keyword section where I listed a series of birds, and here's those birds. So birds was maybe something I was interested in, and then underneath that I have the specific types of birds. So the actual application of these two things is very, very similar. But you noticed when we were looking at the filter panel, I can filter by certain keywords, but I can't, sorry, I can filter by certain categories, but I can't filter by keywords. So they are treated differently in some respects, but for basic cataloging functions, like being able to open up these images predicated or search these images predicated on equality, there's not going to be a ton of difference. So that's a sort of a bit of a subtle, not quite answering your question, but for the most part, you can treat them as pretty similar. Okay, let's see here. There's one other thing I want to talk about, and then I'll address a bunch of questions. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is AI keywords. So I'm going to just go back to my holiday folder, my Mexico one here. AI keywords are still pretty new to ACDSee, and what they are is it's a way to search or essentially to allow the system to create keywords for you. So in this folder, oops, I have a whole bunch of images, and I haven't detected the keywords yet, so I can detect keywords. What I can do and how I can do this is I can go up to the AI panel, and by default, your AI keywords will be running. And so when you add new images and you sort of browse to new images, it'll automatically detect these keywords and then apply suggestions for you. I have turned this off for the purpose of this demonstration. So I have a group of images here. I can run this AI keyword process on them. So I go to AI keywords, and run AI keywords. And what it's going to do is it's going to go through the process of detecting them. And so when you browse to images, this is what it's doing. It's just fulfilling or populating that list of keywords for you. When this is done for all 79 images, it's going to give me a bunch of suggestions. So yeah, so these are all of the AI keywords that appear in all of these images. If I navigate to a particular image, for example, this image right here, let's view it. Let me see, there we go. So this image in particular has one keyword already added. It's the, well, this image in particular already had an architecture keyword. But you can see that there's all these suggestions like building, house, nature, tree, wheel, vehicle, car, that sort of thing. So when I go to catalog images, right, to view my images, let's hide this panel so it's easier to see. There we go. I can search for AI keywords that are suggested or essentially pre-added to images. What does this have? A wheel? Let's look. That's kind of an odd keyword. So let's look up wheel. So it's under other. And if I go to wheel, let's see here, we'll view this differently. This particular grouping is all predicated upon that AI keyword that's been added. So images here contain a bunch of these AI keywords, and then I can search based on these AI keywords. This image, as you can see, has a blue keyword listed as architecture. So this just indicates to me that this particular AI keyword has been added or is actually a keyword on our image here. So this would be moved from not just an AI keyword, but is also treated as a regular keyword. So if I look up something like architecture, I think you should see that image appear. Where is it here? It isn't in this listing. Let's see here. Well, this image already has architecture on it. But if I was to take these two images, for example, and say, add that architecture keyword to it, I should be able to see this pop up in our regular keyword section here. Maybe not. Let's see here. Oh no, there they are. My apologies. I'm just looking in the wrong folder. They just don't have the Mexico sub keyword on them. But these two images are now, not only are they listed as having AI keywords, they're also listing as having manual keywords. So I can take AI keywords basically, and I can click on those little plus buttons. And by doing so, it actually moves them into my regular keyword panel. So AI keywords are searchable, right, based on whatever that list is populated. But I can treat them as like a real keyword. I can move them into the manual my selected user keywords based on that little plus icon there. And real keywords or my keywords, not AI keywords, will be listed as these little blue check marks here. So that just gives me the ability to, based on whatever I'm searching, in this case, let's see here. I'll go back up to my Mexico folder here. It enables me to already view a bunch of keywords that are added to this just automatically. So I can, if I'm not, if I don't have the time to go through my images and add my own keywords, I can utilize the AI keywords that are generated for me automatically as a cataloging function. AI keywords are not perfect, but they're definitely, they're having access to that is like a really nice feature. It's something that really makes people's lives a lot easier. Okay, it looks like I have a fair amount of questions here, so I'm going to work through them here. But just to sort of reiterate what we talked about, and sort of maybe to summarize even, we've talked about, okay, we used ACDSee Mobile Sync to grab a bunch of images off my phone. We moved them into their own folder. And from there, what we also did was rename the files and begin the process of rating our files. In addition to, we also added broad categories like something like holiday and Mexico to these images that enable me to search them. And then I've also added some like keywords based on interests, like architecture to my image. And then from there, we can look at architecture that was taken in Mexico in particular. So I give myself the ability to search based on these qualities. Moreover, I've also looked at how we can apply or rather view AI keywords in our image. And then what we can do is we can reference or bring up basically catalog our images predicated on AI keywords that have been added automatically to our images when we've been browsing them. So we have a bunch of different ways to add keywords, some of which are AI functions and some of which are manual functions that we look at. Will this section be able to review after broadcast? Yes, it will be on our YouTube page, Raker. Okay, what does cataloging do? We've covered it in quite extent, Murray, but cataloging gives me the ability to search for images, and this is treated as distinct or different from the folder locations that they exist in. So when we catalog our images, I can search my whole system, my entire computer, for images that have a cataloging quality. For example, we used rating as an example, right? I have 100 different folders, and in each of these 100 different folders, I have 3 photos of the rating of 5. I've given 3 photos a rating of 5, right? When I go through the process of opening up a catalog of 5, that's going to generate 300 images, right? And those 300 images are going to be are going to have that particular rating, but they're going to be treated as separate from those folders. That we're going to be viewing all of those 5 rated images together in a new place, and essentially like a temporary holding area, because we're not actually moving those files. So think of cataloging as a way to see qualities based off of a huge variety of folders on your hard drive in one place. Doug Rees asked, does the ACDSee metadata get saved in the raw sidecar files? Yes. That's a great question. You know what? Some ACDSee metadata is writable to the file. I think ratings is one of the ones that can be written to the file in particular if it's a writable file type, like a JPEG or a PNG or something like that. But for other keyword qualities, I believe they're treated as, wait, are they treated in the, that's a good question. I want to say all of the editing functions, the actual development changes that you make to the file are added to that sidecar file. But no, that makes sense because in unwritable files like raw files, for example, yeah, it'd have to be added to a sidecar file. It wouldn't be able to be something that you could add directly to the file itself. So depending on the writable quality of the file, I'd say yes. Good question. Sven asked, when I upgrade from ACDSee 2024 to ACDSee Ultimate 2025, will that rerun the AI keywording, assuming ACDSee 2025 has further improved AI keyword engine? Yes. Um, so the rerunning of this process is predicated on browsing, Sven. So what this means is, in general, ACDSee does these databasing functions when you navigate to a file. So let's say you installed ACDSee 2025, right? And you have not converted your database. So that information would typically be stored in the database, but in this case, you're just working off of a brand new version of ACDSee. When you navigate to a folder, say I navigate to this food folder and I'm navigating to it for the first time, right? What happens is ACDSee is running in the background that AI process. So it's essentially starting the process of searching for those AI keywords in those images. And then it's going to populate that list. So the answer is yes, it would be provided that we're operating from a brand new database. Gary asked, moving from PC to Mac, a lot of work done in PC version does not come across to Mac version. Correct. They're totally different products, despite being embedded ACDSee metadata. You can get some by moving to IPTC fields, but not quite capture all metadata done in PC version, which means hundreds of hours of work is lost. Why can't you dev create a conversion process to make this transition? That's a really good question. It'd be a better question for developers. I can't quite answer this, but I think maybe the reason for this, for the experience that you're having, is because these are two different operating systems. And so as such, there's certain things that can't necessarily be translated. Um, but I'm the wrong guy to ask. I'm, as somebody who is like essentially does marketing content for the ACDSee, I'm not quite sure why there would be structural limitations and maybe just even addressing something like keywords. So Gary, as always, I would suggest to maybe forward this question rather to the developer Q&A panel because I don't have an answer for you. I know that ACDSee has made a real commitment to really dramatically improving and have been for several years the capabilities and the similarities between our Mac product and the PC product, but there's still quite a gap in terms of the things you can do in our Mac product versus the things you can do in our PC product. So with our PC product being kind of the flagship version of ACDSee and the Mac being the one that's being sort of updated now, right? So, and all I can say about that is a commitment that ACDSee's been moving forward with and trying to get that product essentially up to speed and looking similar to the way that we use our PC product. Revert asked, I moved to a PC and loaded ACDSee Ultimate 2025 365 for Windows 11. Okay. Using Windows Explorer, I can see folders with video, images, and associated text files. Using ACDSee, it shows videos exist in the folders, but when I try to see videos, ACDSee says the folders are empty. How do I fix this? Whoa. Interesting question. I don't know if I know the answer to this. Using ACDSee's Windows Explorer, I can see folders with video images and associated text files. Okay, so you can see text files, good. You can see video images, right? It's the same way that it would work. I mean, I can view those, right? When I just navigate to, I have a mobile sync folder. I have a couple of videos, like this one video earlier. Where are they? Or maybe I don't have any video files right now. Oh no, there's some video files. So there's some video files there. It's just telling me there, but when I try to see the videos, AC says the folders are empty. Oh, so when you click on this file, it's not producing a video for you, like a short video. Hmm. This is probably beyond the scope of my knowledge as well. I would definitely ask this to developers. This is probably some form of bug that you're describing. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you, Robert. The certain questions are sort of way beyond the scope of what I can answer within a video. But yeah, this one I don't know. BDO asked, do you convert database before you install new version or after? After, great question. So what conversion or database conversion looks like is um, if I navigate to, so I have installed a new version of my software. What a database conversion is implying is that, hey, when I've installed this new version of ACDSee, I want to instruct it to reference a particular database. So when I'm converting a database, I'm always converting older databases. So what that would look like is I would navigate to the database tool in the new software and go through the conversion wizard. What this looks like is it's a little wizard that will say, hey, like which version of ACDSee do you want to reference? In this case, it would automatically select the previous version of ACDSee that you had. So it would, in this case, with a 2025 product, it's suggesting that I look at 2024. And then it's using the default location. If you've installed your database in a custom location, you're going to have to navigate to it. But by default, it's in this particular ACDSee location. So, and then gives me the ability to reconstruct, because I have all the same images, right? All the same images, but I need to actually reference this database in order to see categories, see those keywords and such that I had previously. Good question. Gary says, thanks, Adam. If I could get schemas for both database structures, I'm able to write a mapping program myself. Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of people that are like really handy coders, much more handier than I am, and you can get a lot of information from those guys. And yeah, so just explore that. Also, I think they might point you to, I think there was, I don't know if this is still a thing, but there used to be a custom, like there was the ACDSee was exploring the ability for some for private or individual developers basically to start to explore like some form of open source thing to add like custom mods and things like that to ACDSee. So maybe that would be something to explore there as well. Okay, let's ask some other questions. Let's see here. Bruno asks, I use two computers like you use the two computers and multiple hard drives. How do I share the catalog info between the two computers? Can the data location be on the cloud? Yeah, that's a really good question, Bruno. I don't have the answer for you here. Um, Let me just think this through. Okay, so database is obviously it's one file, and you'd be referencing the one file between two softwares. Hypothetically, this works, right? You save your database to a cloud location, and then you reference said cloud location. The thing is that cloud you would have to have constant access to that cloud location. Otherwise, you're not able to like you won't have an active database. ACDSee requires you to have an active database in order for you to use it at all. Like you can't do anything in ACDSee unless you're referencing a database. Hypothetically, this works. This is again very much a developer question. And then on your other laptop, say, you would then be pointing to that same database. How you would go through the process of saving to that cloud location, again, beyond the scope of my knowledge, hypothetically, this works. Will Picasa created database info come into metadata in ACDSee? Whoa, yeah, that's a good question. So there was a conversion process for this. Okay, so you have your files, Gordon, with your Picasa information. Let's just select this one, for example. Go to tools, metadata. And if I go to, or no, catalog files. Yeah, here it is. Base data. So if I go to this section here, I know that it gives me the ability to pull in Lightroom or Picasa face data. So if you have database information about who those people are, that'll do it. As for their version of their other metadata functions, I'm not sure. I'm pretty certain that just the Picasa stuff will showcase the ratings. If you've rated your images in Picasa, I think ACDSee can just straight up read that, no interaction with the user needed. But as it pertains to just, in this case, Lightroom or Picasa face data, you can import that information using this function right here. Just a reminder, that would be under Tools, Database, Catalog Files, and then we need to account for that particular quality. Good question. Okay, Chuck asked, is it possible to modify the structure of AI keywords? I don't care for some of the structure. What do you mean by modify, Chuck? You mean like the sub keywords and that sort of thing? What does modifying look like to you? That's a good question. I might have an answer. B deal. Do you need to convert when it's just ACDC, just an ACDSee 25 update? No, you don't need to convert anything for an update. You just need to convert for a new product installation. Good question. Tony asks, can the database sit on a NAS accessed by two separate machines? Totally a developer question. That's again, another good one, similar to what Bruno asked earlier. Do ask the developers. That is way beyond the scope of my knowledge in terms of what you can do with cloud or some form of external computer or external location for your database. Bruno asks, sorry, coming back on the subject. So in your case with your two computers, do you manage your catalog on one master dedicated computer and on the second one? Oh yeah. Again, this sort of applies a hypothetical that I'm not certain works. Okay. But I would definitely approach creation of particular catalogs, keywords, and such like that on one computer and then reference them on the second computer, but not create new keywords on them. But again, who knows? You might get information back from the developers when you ask them that question that looks like, hey, no, this actually should work fine either way, where provided that you're referencing that database, as long as you're saving to that database, right? Then it should be fine. But again, I'm not quite certain that I know exactly how that process works between referencing an external database, a database that lives elsewhere than other than the computer that you're referencing on. But again, all hypothetical, Bruno. Ask the developers. Great question. And honestly, I need to know the answer to this. I think I need to know as well. I might actually just look at your question that you asked and see how they answer because it's really valid and an important question. No, I understand that like people use more than one computer obviously for editing functions, and there's photographers that are like leaving to go in the field. You know, whether or not you're a photographer from a professional sense or you're just someone who's like, I'm taking photos abroad and I'm curious about using a cloud designation for my database. Super valid. Good question. Okay, get back to me. Yeah. No, I will. I literally will have a look at this question that you asked there. Okay. That's kind of it for today, folks. I mean, we're just answering questions at this point. But if you have any further questions, do let me know. But otherwise, the workshop's totally over. And I really appreciate that you participated today. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. I will have this uploaded on our YouTube page in a couple days. I have another tutorial content coming for you as well. Also, if you have any suggestions for workshops, I would love to cover the topic that you want me to cover. Sorry, Robert, I meant to answer your question from earlier. This is, again, one that I would ask the developers. It's sort of beyond me in terms of, yeah, I did see it. I just didn't have an answer for you, so I prioritized other people's questions. But yes, no, I would ask the developers this as well. Yahtzee, I could use a workshop on various geometry tools and filters available in edit mode. This would include crop, resize, perspective correction, distortion correction, and lens correction. Absolutely. Geometry. The workshop on geometry. I love that idea. Thank you, Yahtzee. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So in particular in edit mode, okay, sure. And then crop, resize, and those functions. Is there anything in particular you're curious about them? Like in this case, this include, I mean, those tools change the orientation of an image. And there's lots of different ways to change the orientation of an image. So maybe we just cover all of them. Distortion correction, that sort of thing. Those are just like processes that apply suggestions or changes to the orientation of an image based on various qualities. We can talk about that. That's a good workshop idea. BDLS, workshop for making captions for photos, how they show up in a slideshow. When you say captions, you know what? Yeah, I can do that. I think that function works fine. There's a way you can add text directly to a photo, right? But you can also add captions that pop up as well. So we can talk about that. Captions and images. If not, that'd be something that I could cover in a tutorial as well. Difference between crop and resize, totally, yeah. Bruno, suggestion, every year when the updated version says 2025 appears, a workshop on how to transfer your catalog and see the steps. That's a great idea. I absolutely can cover converting databases. And I like the idea of having that be in September or August or something like that when we have a update. I should I could schedule a workshop for next year. That would be hilarious. Yeah, just like schedule a workshop 6 months in advance. I love that idea. No, but that is a really good suggestion too, and I've written it down. I have a list, an ongoing list of things I reference for workshops, so I'll add it to it. So great, thank you. Okay, folks, I'm gonna probably call it quits here. It's about an hour plus of workshop content there. Like I said, as always, if you have any questions, just reach out to me over the Connect. I answer as many questions as I can there. This workshop will be up on our YouTube page. And if you have any other suggestions for either workshop or tutorial content, again, fire those suggestions to me on our. You can actually navigate to find me. You should be able to find me just straight up from the members panel. But if you go to a workshop like this one, for example, oops, uh, oops, go to past. This one, for example, my name will pop up here. This will give you the ability to interact with me, so you can just send me a personal message here. So that's all you need to know. Pat, I'm glad that was useful. Thank you, Luis. I appreciate it. Thank you, Bud. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, John. I'm so glad this was helpful. Thanks for participating, everybody. I appreciate it. Also, looks like we had really good attendance today, which is awesome. So Rodrigo and I do quite a bunch of workshops. So we do like 3 to 4 workshops a month, and we're always impressed with the fact that we get such regular high participancy. Sorry, there's the word we're looking for, which is really cool. Thank you.